Sit up straight, girl. You've been married to our Zhou family for 30 days now. Time you learn our household rules. Shinwei closed her work laptop gently, sliding the mouse aside, so she could give her full attention. She'd been finalizing a 7-figure client contract before the interruption, her monthly after-tax salary sitting solidly at $70,000. She already sensed exactly where this conversation was heading, a cold unease coiling tight in her stomach. What rules are you referring to, Mom? Lu Yufin finally tore her eyes off the screen, swiveling her head to pin Shinwei with a harsh, judgmental stare. She held her palm open flat, stretched fully across the table toward her daughter-in-law, fingers gnarled and rigid from decades of housework, like she was already owed every cent Shinwei earned. Hand over your salary card to me. From this month forward, I'll set aside a mere 1,000 yuan pocket money for your personal spending. The rest, 69,000, goes straight into my custody to save for the family's future. A bitter, hollow laugh nearly slipped out of Shenwei's throat. She'd worked 6 years climbing corporate ranks to hit that 7-figure monthly pay packet, pulling overtime weekends, sacrificing holidays, burning herself out on endless project deadlines to reach this income bracket. Now her husband's mother thought she was entitled to 98% of every paycheck. No discussion, no compromise. She kept her expression calm, diplomatic, choosing the softest refusal she could muster to avoid an immediate blow-up. I appreciate you wanting to plan for our long-term finances, but I already have a structured investment and savings portfolio mapped out for Zhou Ming and me. We'll manage our joint earnings ourselves. Lu Yufin's face darkened instantly, the warm, performative maternal warmth vanishing without a trace. Her voice shot up an octave, defensive accusations spilling out one after another before Shinwei could add another word. You think I planned to steal your money? I raised Zhou Ming single-handedly through hardship, slaved away for years just to see him settle down with a wife. And this is how you repay my kindness. Shenwei stayed silent. She learned fast over the past month that any pushback, any logical counterargument would get twisted into disrespect and ingratitude in Lu Yufin's eyes. Zhou Ming stood out on the balcony behind the living room's sliding glass, chattering loudly on a phone call with distant relatives, deliberately tuning out the tension building between his mother and wife. He wasn't oblivious. He'd seen his mother corner Shinwei dozens of times with unreasonable demands, but he always chose cowardly avoidance rather than mediate or defend his vows. Lu Yufin slammed her palm harder on the table, the teacup rattling violently. Once you step through the Zhou family front door, you abide by our laws. What does a woman need such a huge salary for anyway? Every cent you make belongs to this household, to our bloodline. That line snuffed out the last tiny flicker of goodwill Shenwei had held toward her in-law. She folded her laptop shut completely, standing slowly to her feet. There was no point arguing with someone who viewed her 6-figure career earnings as communal property by birthright, ignoring her years of brutal sacrifice to climb the corporate ladder. I've got unfinished client work to wrap up in the bedroom. We can circle back to this later if you'd like to talk it through rationally. She turned and walked toward the master suite before Lu Yufin could fire off more insults, a loud, disdainful huff echoing behind her as she shut the bedroom door. Hours later, Zhou Ming slipped into the bedroom after all the relatives left, tiptoeing over to the bed like he expected Shinwei to blow up at him. He reached out to pat her arm awkwardly, eyes darting away, so he couldn't meet her gaze head-on. Don't take Mom's words to heart, all right? She's always had a fiery temper, but her intentions are only good for us. Shenwei pulled her arm away from his touch, tilting her head to study his evasive face. Do you honestly believe her demand to seize all my salary aside from 1,000 monthly spending cash is reasonable? Zhou Ming began to equivocate immediately, the classic family peacemaking act that never once sided with her. It's just money at the end of the day, babe. Don't let small household friction ruin our marital harmony over trivial cash disagreements. Shenwei's heart sank inch by inch inside her chest. This wasn't trivial. It was a complete violation of her financial autonomy, her labor, her personal independence. Her husband saw his mother's outrageous power grab as nothing more than a minor domestic squabble to brush under the rug. The next workday dragged by in a haze of back-to-back meetings and urgent client revisions. Shinwei left the office right on closing time, exhausted and ready to unwind in her own home, only to stand frozen at the apartment entrance when she pulled her house keys from her bag. The metal key would not slot into the lock no matter how she twisted and jiggled it. The lock cylinder had been fully replaced overnight. Cold evening wind bit at her neck as she stood alone in the apartment complex corridor, staring blankly at the unfamiliar shiny new lock hardware covering her front door. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed Zhou Ming's number without raising her voice, stating the plain, brutal fact the second he picked up. I can't get into our apartment. The front door lock's been swapped out. There was a lengthy beat of silence on the other end of the line, followed by the loud chatter of a crowded restaurant banquet hall in the background. He was out dining with his mother and extended relatives, celebrating some random family occasion while she stood locked out of their shared home. Oh yeah, Mom hired a locksmith this morning to swap it out, said the old lock posed a safety hazard for the house. His tone was utterly casual, devoid of guilt or concern, like being barred from her own property was an insignificant nuisance. Hang around a nearby cafe for a little while longer. I'll swing by with the new keys once dinner wraps up. She changed the lock without sending me a single text or making a single phone call to warn me first. Shenwei asked, her tone steady but fraying at the edges. Mom's an older lady. She doesn't always think through every tiny detail fully. Just bear with it for a couple hours, okay? Bear with it. Shenwei repeated the phrase under her breath, a bitter metallic taste coating her tongue. To him, her right to enter the home she'd co-funded was a minor inconvenience she was obligated to tolerate for his mother's whims. Her dignity, her personal space, her basic security meant nothing next to keeping his parent happy. She hung up the call without another word. No screaming, no dramatic breakdown. There was no point lashing out at a man who'd already proven he would never stand up for her against his overbearing mother. She turned on her heel, walked straight out of the complex gate, and booked a room at the 5-star hotel closest to her corporate headquarters for the night. After showering and slipping into the hotel's soft bathrobe, Shinwei stood before floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the city's glittering night skyline. Every glowing window represented a different family, yet none of them felt like hers anymore. She didn't send Zhou Ming a follow-up text, didn't beg for the new keys, didn't bargain to come home. She opened her phone browser and typed a single search query: top-tier divorce attorneys in the city. She gave Zhou Ming a full 3 days to reach out with genuine remorse, a sincere apology, or a willingness to mediate the conflict fairly. Over those 72 hours, he only contacted her twice. The first call came right after the family banquet ended that same night, demanding to know her hotel location so he could hand over the new lock keys. When Shinwei told him she had no intention of returning to the apartment anytime soon, he sighed irritably and accused her of throwing a childish tantrum, ordering her to come home before his mother grew more upset. She cut the call mid-sentence without responding. The second form of contact arrived as a voice message the following afternoon, Zhou Ming's tone laced with wounded pride rather than concern for her safety. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish with this stunt? All over a simple lock replacement. You're making me lose face in front of every family member. Can't you just drop the attitude and come back? Shinwei ignored the voice message entirely, leaving every subsequent incoming call and WeChat text unread. It became crystal clear to her that Zhou Ming viewed her trauma and violation as nothing more than an embarrassing tantrum to wait out until she caved and returned obediently to the household dynamic his mother dictated. He never once asked if she'd found a safe place to stay, never worried if she was alone late at night in a strange hotel. He only cared about his own social reputation among relatives. On the afternoon of the third day, her retained attorney Zhang Yu confirmed the divorce petition had been officially filed and delivered by expedited courier straight to Zhou Ming's corporate office address. Within 10 minutes of the delivery confirmation hitting Shinwei's inbox, her cell phone began blowing up with non-stop incoming calls from Zhou Ming, Lu Yufin, and her sharp-tongued sister-in-law Zhou Ling. She muted the device entirely and left it face down on the hotel desk, refusing to engage with any of them. 10 o'clock that night, thunderous, non-stop knocking echoed against her hotel room door. She pulled up the visual intercom feed to see the entire Zhou clan lined up in the hallway, Zhou Ming looking panicked and defeated, Lu Yufin's face twisted with unbridled rage, and Zhou Ling standing beside her mother, arms crossed and sneering. Lu Yufin's shrill yell carried clearly through the thick hotel door before Shinwei could speak a word into the intercom speaker. Get out here right now, you shameless gold digger. How dare you file for divorce against my son just over a trivial lock swap? Are you out of your mind? Shinwei pressed the talk button on the intercom, her voice calm, quiet, and unshakable, loud enough for every person in the hallway to hear crystal clear through the speaker system. You swapped my lockout to lock me out of our shared home. I'm swapping my husband out of my life. It's perfectly fair trade. The shouting and banging outside cut off instantly, replaced by dead, heavy silence stretching down the carpeted hotel corridor. Zhou Ming's desperate, pleading voice broke through the quiet seconds later, begging her to unlock the door so they could talk things over privately. We have nothing left to discuss between us. All future communications must go through my legal counsel, Shinwei replied flatly through the intercom, cutting off his plea mid-sentence. Zhou Ling's sharp, venomous tone cut in next, screaming insults through the closed door. You think you're hot stuff just because you earn big paychecks? My brother wasted his youth marrying a cruel, ungrateful woman like you. Shinwei ignored the sister-in-law's rant entirely, picking up the room phone to dial hotel front desk security and report a group of strangers harassing her private suite. Within 5 minutes, uniformed hotel security officers arrived to escort the Zhou family away from the hallway, a tense argument breaking out between the staff and Lu Yufin before the commotion faded into distant elevator chatter. Shinwei shut off the intercom feed completely, pouring a small glass of red wine and sinking down onto the hotel lounge sofa. 3 days prior, she'd been burning with cold, boiling anger over her mother-in-law's overreach and her husband's cowardice. No, all that rage had burned away, leaving only quiet, unshakable resolve to sever this toxic marriage at the root once and for all. The next morning at 9 sharp, Shinwei walked into a high-rise law firm downtown. Zhang Yu's office was minimalist, lined with case files and legal textbooks, the attorney's sharp, observant eyes sizing her up the second she stepped through the door. They sat across a solid oak conference table, and Shen laid out every incident chronologically without holding anything back. She started with Lu Yufin's first demand for full salary control 1 month into marriage, recounted the cold confrontation when she refused to hand over her bank card, then detailed the shock of finding a brand new lock blocking her from her own home. She pulled out her phone, tapping to pull up the recorded phone call with Zhou Ming that night, the audio where he brushed off her predicament and told her to simply tolerate his mother's unreasonable actions. She slid printed copies of her income certificate, bank monthly flow records across the table for Zhang to review, proof of her steady 70,000 yuan after-tax salary. All real estate and vehicles I own are fully paid before our marriage. No joint assets exist between us. Shen clarified plainly, her tone steady with zero hesitation. My only request is a fast, clean divorce with zero entanglement on my personal property. I don't want to drag this out longer than necessary. Zhang Yu adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses, flipping through the stack of printed evidence with a quiet look of approval crossing her face. I've handled hundreds of divorce cases over a decade of practice, and you're easily the most level-headed, goal-oriented client I've represented. Your evidence chain is airtight. Verbal demands, witness context, audio recordings, financial documents all aligned to prove their unreasonable encroachment on your personal rights. She paused, jotting quick notes on a legal pad, then warned Shen of the coming battle ahead. Their playbook is predictable. They'll use family sentiment, public gossip, and emotional manipulation to wear you down once the court papers hit their hands. Expect insults, harassment, attempts to paint you as impulsive and heartless. They might even show up at your workplace to create a scene and damage your professional reputation. Shun leaned back in her leather chair, completely unfazed by the warning. I don't care about their gossip or public sympathy. My career and self-worth don't rely on their family's approval. Zhang nodded, satisfied with her resolve. We'll file the petition to his company address this afternoon, as you requested. A critical rule for the coming weeks: no one-on-one private contact with any member of the Zhou household. Every message, call, or demand they send must be routed straight to me to handle on your behalf. Any impulsive emotional reaction from you will be twisted against you during mediation. After signing authorization paperwork and confirming all evidence copies for the court, Shun left the law firm. Sunlight hit her face the moment she stepped outside the building, a heavy weight lifting slightly off her chest. For the first time since Lu Yufan slammed that teacup down and demanded her entire paycheck, she had a solid, legal plan to cut this toxic relationship loose. The harassment started less than 24 hours after the divorce petition was delivered to Zhou Ming's office. Shun's WeChat blew up with dozens of unread messages, split between 3 separate senders: Zhou Ming, Lu Yufan, and Zhou Ling, the meddlesome sister-in-law. Zhou Ming's messages attempted to play the gentle, wronged husband angle, begging her to reconsider and withdraw the lawsuit for the sake of their short marriage. He kept repeating how embarrassing this whole ordeal was for his colleagues at work, framing her firm boundary setting as a childish, reckless outburst. Lu Yufan's voice notes were unfiltered rage, each clip stretching 40 to 50 seconds of screaming insults. She called Shin a money-obsessed witch who married into their family solely to take advantage of their son, ranting that this Zhou bloodline had been cursed by marrying such an ungrateful woman. Shin saved every single audio file, screenshotting the message timestamps to forward directly to Zhang Yu as supplementary evidence. Worst of all was Zhou Ling. She uploaded a clear photo of Shun taken at a corporate gala into a massive family WeChat group with over 50 distant relatives, attaching a vicious caption that labeled her a high-salary gold digger abandoning her husband after just 30 days of marriage, threatening to drag the entire Zhou family through court for trivial domestic friction. Within hours, unfamiliar numbers tied to distant relatives flooded Shun's SMS inbox, all spouting the same generic moral lectures. Women need to be forgiving. Don't ruin your reputation over minor fights. Zhou Ming is a quiet, good man you're bullying. Shun didn't reply to a single message or text. She batch-saved every screenshot, compiled them into a labeled folder, and sent the full archive to Zhang Yu with a short note: additional harassment evidence for the record. Her lawyer responded within 2 minutes with 4 simple words: perfect, preserve all. The next morning, the front desk of her corporate office dialed her internal line mid-leadership meeting, a nervous receptionist speaking softly through the receiver. MS. Shin, a man claiming to be your husband is waiting in the main lobby. He's refusing to leave unless you agree to meet with him privately. Shin's expression didn't shift. Barely pausing the project presentation she was leading for company executives, informed security to escort him off the premises immediately. If he resists removal, dial the local police non-emergency line. She set the phone down and picked back up her presentation slides without further comment, the executives around the table exchanging quiet, curious glances, but choosing not to interrupt her work. Once the meeting wrapped an hour later, her personal assistant Shin knocked on her office door, face tight with discomfort. He wouldn't leave after security asked him to go. He's standing out on the plaza in front of the building yelling, drawing a crowd of passersby and office staff to stare. Shin walked over to the floor-to-ceiling office window, sliding vertical blinds open a crack to stare down at the chaos below. Zhou Ming stood in the center of the pedestrian plaza, gesturing wildly at the glass office tower, shouting false accusations that she'd been manipulated by her company's leadership into abandoning her marriage. Onlookers clustered around him, pulling out phones to film the spectacle, every whisper and pointed stare a deliberate attempt to ruin her professional standing and force her to cave to his family's demands. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed Zhang Yu without hesitation, her tone calm and collected despite the public stunt unfolding downstairs. My husband is creating a disruptive scene outside my corporate building, spreading slanderous falsehoods about me to bystanders. Zhang's response was sharp and tactical, no trace of panic in her voice. Have your trusted assistant record footage from multiple angles, capture clear audio of every statement he makes. Do not engage with him directly whatsoever. The more he escalates in public, the stronger our evidence of emotional harassment and defamation becomes for court. Shun hung up and relayed the exact instructions to Chin, sending the young assistant down with a discreet camera to capture every second of Zhou Ming's outburst. She returned to her desk and continued sorting client contracts, unbothered by the commotion taking place dozens of floors beneath her office. She'd known Zhou Ming would resort to public humiliation tactics to pressure her, and she'd prepared accordingly. Nearly an hour passed before local patrol officers arrived on scene, detaining Zhou Ming for public disturbance and taking him away in a patrol car. Chun sent over the full video footage once the plaza cleared. The audio captured every slanderous line he'd shouted, claiming her high salary had twisted her mind and convinced her to discard her loyal husband. Shin forwarded the full video file to Zhang Yu instantly, marking it as critical evidence for the upcoming mediation session. That evening, an unfamiliar number popped up on her cell screen. Zhou Ming's father, a quiet man who'd stayed completely silent through all prior family conflict. She hesitated briefly before tapping accept, curious what the previously uninvolved elder wanted to discuss. Shinwei, can we meet face-to-face tomorrow afternoon? Just the two of us, no one else present. His voice sounded worn, drained from weeks of household fighting caused by his wife and daughter-in-law's clash. Shin agreed, setting the meeting spot at a quiet tea house 10 minutes from her office, then immediately notified Zhang Yu of the planned conversation. Her lawyer instructed her to carry a hidden recording device and avoid committing to any verbal compromises, only listening to whatever he planned to say, without offering concessions. The following afternoon, Shen arrived 5 minutes early to the tea house private booth. Zhou's father sat waiting at the wooden table, his temples streaked with far more gray hair than she'd noticed on past family gatherings, deep exhaustion etched into every line on his face. He stood the second she stepped into the booth, moving to bow deeply as an apology, which Shen stepped sideways to avoid, not willing to accept an unprompted bow for crimes she never committed. "Please sit, uncle," she said politely, maintaining basic civility despite everything his family had put her through. He sank back into his wooden chair with a heavy sigh, hands folded tightly on the tabletop. "I've come to apologize on behalf of my wife and son for all the hurt they've caused you these past weeks." Zhou Ming grew up completely spoiled by his mother. He has no backbone to stand up to her unreasonable demands, but his heart isn't inherently cruel. Shen listened silently as he launched into a long appeal for reconciliation, leaning heavily on the short duration of their marriage to argue that splitting so quickly would damage both their reputations permanently in their local social circle. Every couple bumps heads. Can you find it in yourself to give Zhou Ming a second chance to make amends? She waited for him to finish speaking before responding, each question deliberate and pointed, cutting through his soft emotional appeals one by one. "Uncle, let me ask you 3 straightforward questions. Do you believe swapping the front door lock and locking your daughter-in-law out of her own home counts as a minor marital bump? Do you think telling a woman to simply tolerate unfair mistreatment from her mother-in-law is the proper stance a husband should take? Is storming her workplace to spread lies and publicly humiliate her an act of a kind, good-hearted man?" Each question landed heavy, and the older man fell silent, unable to produce a single reasonable counter-argument to refute her points. His facial expression shifted from pleading sorrow to quiet resentment, realizing she would not cave to his gentle family-based manipulation. "Even if you're determined to divorce, leaving room for compromise benefits everyone's future social standing," he warned, a subtle undertone of threat creeping into his tone. "Our family still has connections around the city. You're an outsider building your career here. Don't throw away your professional prospects just to win a petty argument over money and household rules." Shen let out a quiet, unamused laugh at the thinly veiled intimidation tactic, her posture straight and unyielding. "My career was built entirely through 6 years of overtime, client wins, and personal sacrifice. No favor or connection from your family required. If anyone's actions threaten my professional reputation, it's your wife and son's public harassment and slander, not my choice to protect my own property and autonomy." She leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with him to drive her core logic home. "You urge me to show mercy and leave a line of retreat for your family, yet none of your relatives considered that same courtesy when Lu Yufan swapped my lock to trap me outside my own house, or when Zhou Ming screamed false accusations outside my office building. Your family only demands kindness from the person they hurt, never restraining the people inflicting harm in the first place. That double standard isn't fair." She repeated the line she told Lu Yufan at the hotel door weeks prior, calm and unchanging. "She changed my lock to cut me out of my home. I'm choosing to cut him out of my life. The trade is entirely equal." Shen pulled 200 yuan cash from her wallet and set it flat on the table to cover the tea bill before standing to leave. No intention of lingering through more empty emotional bargaining. "I'll see you in court mediation. There's no need for further private meetings between us." She exited the tea house without glancing back, leaving Zhou's father alone in the booth, defeated and unable to change her unshakable decision to push through with the divorce lawsuit. 2 days after the tea house talk with Zhou Ming's father, Shen Wei received a court notice via Zhang Yu's office. Court-mandated pre-litigation mediation was scheduled for the following Wednesday afternoon. Zhang Yu called her the second the document landed on her desk, laying out 2 clear options for how to handle the session. Option 1. You skip the mediation entirely. I attend alone with full power of attorney. This keeps you separated from their emotional manipulation. No chance they can wear you down face to face. Option 2. You come with me and witness their whole performance in person. Personally, I'd suggest the second route. Shen Wei paused, staring at the printed mediation notice laid out on her desk, the words "marital trivial dispute" stamped across the top in faint blue ink. The court paperwork framed her stolen financial autonomy and illegal lock replacement as nothing more than a petty domestic squabble, and she knew the Zhou clan would lean hard on that framing to paint her as irrational. "Why do you recommend I show it myself?" she asked quietly. Zhang Yu's tone sharpened with professional clarity. "You need to see exactly who you're divorcing, with an official mediator present as a neutral witness. You'll hear every lie they fabricate to shift all blame onto you, and it'll erase any tiny lingering soft spot you might still hold for this family. Once you watch them twist every truth in front of a legal official, you'll never second-guess your choice to end this marriage." Shen Wei nodded firmly. "I'll go with you. I want to watch them dig their own holes." For the next 4 days, her daily schedule fell back into a quiet, stable rhythm. She returned to her regular office routine, buried herself in client project negotiations, and ignored every incoming call and message from the Zhou family. Without her engaging to feed their anger, their flood of harassment messages slowly thinned out. They'd paused their attacks to plan their staged innocent act for the mediation room. Shen knew the calm was only temporary, a lull before their biggest performance yet. Wednesday morning arrived. Shen took the whole afternoon off work, slipped on a sharp, minimalist tailored blazer and subtle neutral makeup. She wanted to walk into that mediation room looking composed, successful, completely unaffected by their chaos, to send an unspoken message. Losing this marriage would cost them far more than it would ever damage her life. She drove to Zhang Yu's law firm first, riding over to the district court in the attorney's sedan. On the drive over, Zhang Yu ran through a quick mental checklist, repeating critical ground rules over and over to lock them into Shen Wei's head. No matter how loud they cry, how viciously they insult you, do not raise your voice or snap back. Any emotional outburst they capture will be spun as proof you're hot-headed and unreasonable. Let me handle all cross-examination and evidence presentation. Your only job is to sit, listen, and observe their hypocrisy. Shin nodded, gaze fixed on the road ahead. I won't react. I just want their lies to collapse the second we lay out proof. When they pulled into the court parking lot, Shin spotted the entire Zhou crew loitering by the mediation center entrance. Zhou Ming looked gaunt, dark bags under his eyes, shoulders hunched like a man crushed under stress. Lu Yufeng stood rigid beside him, jaw tight, eyes shooting venomous glare straight at Shen Wei the second she stepped out of the car. Zhou Ling hovered on her mother's other side, arms crossed, sneering openly. Beside them stood their hired civil lawyer, a middle-aged man with a slick, calculating expression, ready to spin their false narrative to the mediator. Neither side exchanged greetings as they filed into the narrow mediation room, split across two sides of a long laminated conference table. A middle-aged female mediator with a gentle, impartial expression sat at the head of the table, shuffling case files and preparing to open the session. The air in the tiny room turned thick, tense before a single word was spoken. The mediator cleared her throat, opening the formal dialogue. We're gathered today to attempt reconciliation between Mr. Zhou Ming and MS. Shin Wei, to resolve their marital dispute without formal trial. Both sides, please speak calmly and honestly about what led to this conflict. The second the mediator finished her opening line, Lu Yufeng exploded into loud, theatrical wailing. She slammed her palms against the table surface, rocking her body back and forth as sobs ripped out of her throat, putting on a show of crushing heartbreak for the official witness. What kind of bad luck did our family run into to end up with such an ungrateful daughter-in-law? She bawled, tears streaming down her face in thick, fake streaks. My son treated her like a treasure from day one, bent over backward to accommodate every one of her whims, and the second one tiny misunderstanding pops up, she races straight to the courthouse to destroy our whole family's reputation. Zhou Ling immediately jumped in as her mother's backup, a perfectly rehearsed tag team act. Anti-mediator, you have to listen to our side of the story. My mom only wanted to help the young couple manage their spending. Young people with big salaries always blow cash recklessly. She just wanted to safeguard their future savings. How is that a crime? Zhou Ming kept his head bowed low, not uttering a single word, playing the silent, wounded husband victimized by his overbearing, high-earning wife. Their hired lawyer jumped into the fray next, delivering a polished, one-sided argument to the mediator. My client Zhou Ming and his mother only acted out of well-meaning concern for the couple's finances. The lock swap was a trivial safety oversight on MS. Lu's part, nothing more than a minor household error that spiraled wildly out of control thanks to Ms. Shen's impulsive decision to file for divorce barely 1 month post-wedding. This marriage has zero irreparable rift. We firmly oppose dissolution and request a formal reconciliation. The mediator's gaze drifted over to Shin Wei, curious and searching, waiting for her response. Before Shin could open her mouth, Zhang Yu leaned forward, sliding a thick stack of printed documents across the table toward the mediator, her tone cool, unhurried, and razor-sharp. With all due respect to opposing counsel's elaborate storytelling, let's cross-reference their good intentions with tangible, recorded evidence. First, Zhang Yu laid out Shen Wei's official after-tax income certificate and 3 months of bank transaction slips, tapping the bold 70,000 monthly salary printout with her pen, MS. Lu Yufen's idea of helping manage funds was demanding full custody of MS. Shen's salary card, restricting her personal spending to just 1,000 yuan per month and seizing the remaining 69,000 in full each pay cycle. Does that strike the mediator as reasonable financial guidance, or an outright seizure of another adult's legally earned income? Lu Yufen's tearful performance froze instantly, her face flushing deep crimson, caught red-handed in her lie. She sputtered useless denials, unable to counter the printed bank records laid out directly in front of the court official. Zhang Yu did not pause, pulling out printed screenshots of Zhou Ling's inflammatory family group posts next, sliding them across the table for the mediator to read. Zhou Ling publicly circulated MS. Shen's personal photograph to over 50 extended relatives alongside defamatory text labeling her a greedy, heartless gold digger, inciting dozens of strangers to send harassing text messages to my client. This is the harmless family concern they claim. Zhou Ling's smug sneer vanished entirely, her face drained of all color, staring at the printed screenshots in blind panic, unable to find a single excuse for her online slander. Finally, Zhang Yu pulled out her mobile phone, tapping the screen to play the recorded phone call from the night Shin Wei was locked out of her own home. Zhou Ming's casual, dismissive voice echoed clearly through the small mediation room speaker. She's an elder, just bear with her a little, it's not a big deal. Right after the audio finished playing, Zhang Yu pulled up the video clip Chen had filmed outside Shin Wei's corporate building, showing Zhou Ming screaming false slander to a crowd of onlookers, disrupting business operations to publicly shame his wife. Every piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow against the Zhou family's fabricated innocent narrative. Their staged crying, coordinated excuses, and polished legal argument all crumbled apart in seconds. Lu Yufeng stopped sobbing mid-sentence. Zhou Ling clamped her mouth shut tight, and Zhou Ming's head sank so far his forehead nearly touched the tabletop. Their hired lawyer sat silent, no rebuttal left to offer. All his talking points had been completely disproven with irrefutable documentation. The mediator's expression shifted from gentle neutrality to stern disapproval, glancing back and forth at the 3 Zhou family members lined across the opposite table. I've reviewed all the submitted evidence thoroughly. MR. Zhou, as your spouse was locked out of her private residence, you offered no support and told her to simply tolerate unfair treatment. You later disrupted your wife's workplace to spread false rumors. Ms. Lu, your demand to seize nearly all of Ms. Shen's monthly salary far exceeds any reasonable financial advisory boundary. S. Zhou Ling, your online defamation constitutes clear emotional harm to the opposing party. Lu Yufen's self-control snapped completely at the mediator's reprimand. She shot to her feet, pointing a trembling finger straight at Shin Wei, screaming shrill accusations through the quiet room. You planned all this from the start. You recorded every conversation just waiting to trap our family. You've been scheming to divorce us since the wedding day. You vicious, calculating witch. Mom, stop yelling. Zhou Ming scrambled up to grab her arm, trying to pull her back into her seat, mortified by her public outburst in front of court staff. She shook him off violently, continuing to scream and stamp her feet on the tile floor, throwing a full public tantrum right inside a government mediation facility. Zhang Yu stepped smoothly between Xin Wei and the raging older woman, shielding her client without raising her voice, while the mediator loudly ordered Lu Yufan to calm down or face removal from the room. The ugly, unhinged display erased every last shred of the grieving, kind mother persona she'd spent 10 minutes performing minutes earlier. Shen Wei watched the spectacle with total emotional detachment. This was the true face of the family she'd nearly spent a lifetime bound to. Once Lu Yufan exhausted her rage and sank back into her chair, red-faced and gasping, the mediator issued an official mediation failure ruling. Given the irreconcilable conflict, clear emotional harm inflicted upon MS, Shen Wei, and zero willingness from the Zhou side to take genuine accountability for their actions, this mediation session is officially terminated. The case will proceed to formal court trial per standard procedure. Shen Wei stood up the second the mediator finished speaking, ready to leave without lingering to listen to more of their pleas. Zhou Ming darted around the table to block her path, grabbing lightly at her wrist in a desperate attempt to stop her from walking out. Wait, just give me a minute to talk, please. Shen pulled her arm free in one smooth, cold motion, stepping back to put distance between them, her gaze flat and unfeeling as she stared at him. You saw how your family acts the second they don't get their way. I can't live a lifetime constantly bracing for this level of chaos and unfairness. We're done to a meeting court. She turned, walking out of the mediation room side by side with Zhang Yu, leaving the entire defeated Zhou clan behind in the silent, stuffy room to stew in their own exposed lies. Heartless trick are you pulling now? I stepped past her to stand beside the two officers, speaking in a calm, clear volume for the official body cameras rolling on their uniforms. This is my exclusive private residence. I hold full legal ownership. They forced entry without my consent and refused to evacuate despite formal legal notice. I am within my full property rights to request temporary power suspension during law enforcement intervention to prevent further damage to my interior furnishings and fixtures. Zhang pulled the recently issued court emergency behavior preservation order from her briefcase and handed it to the lead patrol officer to read aloud for the Zhou family to hear. This court order mandates immediate full evacuation of all 3 individuals from the premises. Failure to comply counts as contempt of court, punishable by compulsory law enforcement detention. Zhou Ming's confidence shattered the second the words contempt of court left the officer's mouth. He had worked a stable state-owned enterprise management position for years, well aware a police detention record and court violation notation would permanently tank his career promotions, possibly lead to outright dismissal. He grabbed Lu Yufan's arm and tried to tug her back, whispering urgent pleas for her to stop resisting. Lu Yufan shook him off violently, dropping onto the hallway tile floor to throw a theatrical public tantrum, wailing and beating her palms against the ground while Zhou Ling mirrored her mother's act, both of them staging a scene to draw sympathetic attention from curious neighbors peeking out of adjacent doorways. Zhang leaned forward, speaking in a low, deliberate tone that cut through their shrill crying, naming each of their critical vulnerable points one by one, without raising her voice. Ms. Lu, you own fixed-term savings and a pension fund subject to official social service review. Zhou Ming holds state institution employment with zero tolerance for disciplinary or criminal records. Zhou Ling works as a public school teacher bound by strict teacher ethics evaluation standards. A detention record stemming from contempt of court and illegal intrusion will permanently damage all 3 of your livelihoods, savings eligibility, and professional standing. The 2 women's wailing cut off instantly. Their performative grief vanished in a split second, replaced by stunned, defeated silence. They could ignore moral appeals, dismiss family criticism, but they could not brush off permanent damage to their income and stable careers. The patrol officers seized the moment to deliver a final 5-minute evacuation ultimatum. With no more leverage to lean on, Zhou Ming rushed inside the dark apartment to begin haphazardly packing their scattered luggage, Lu Yufan and Zhou Ling following slowly, heads hung low in complete defeat. Within the allotted window, they dragged their bags out of my unit, shuffling past me without daring to make eye contact as law enforcement officers stood by to oversee their full removal from the building premises. Once the hallway cleared, I unlocked my apartment door with a new spare key the property manager provided, stepping inside to survey the chaos they'd left scattered across every room, already mentally compiling a new inventory of property damage evidence to add to our civil compensation claim. The mess left inside my apartment was a tangible record of how the Zhou family had disrespected every part of my life. Every surface was coated with takeout grease and crumpled snack wrappers, my custom solid-wood wall art torn off and tossed into a balcony cardboard box. The minimalist decor I'd spent years curating replaced with a gaudy cheap Harmony at Home. Cross-stitch Lu Yufan had hung above the sofa. My study, once stacked with professional textbooks and project files, had been overtaken by Zhou Ling's cosmetics and selfie tripods. The master bedroom silk bedding I bought after a year of overtime work was swapped out for scratchy, garish red-green linens they'd brought from their old house. Every closet shelf had been ransacked, my tailored office suits shoved roughly to the back to make space for their cheap streetwear. I pulled out my phone and filmed every room inch by inch, capturing stains on the floor, damaged wall hooks, stained vanity countertops, and crumpled private documents dumped carelessly in a damp balcony bin. Zhang Yu arrived with a notary public an hour later. The official walked through each space with me, signing a full damage inventory report that carried legal weight for future compensation claims. After notarization wrapped up, I booked a high-end deep cleaning crew and scheduled a brand new top-tier smart lock installation. This time, only my fingerprints and passcode would grant access to the home I'd built entirely alone. A full day of scrubbing, disinfecting, and replacing damaged decor couldn't erase the lingering disgust, but it erased their physical traces from my private space at last. 2 days after they were forced out of my apartment, Zhou Ming's legal counsel reached out to Zhang Yu to request a formal settlement negotiation at the law firm's conference room. I didn't hesitate to agree. I wanted to witness just how far their greed would stretch now that all their underhanded tactics had backfired and left them facing criminal investigation risks. The afternoon of negotiation, I dressed in a crisp formal blazer, drove to the firm early to go over our full list of evidence and legal leverage with Zhang Yu before the opposing party arrived. They'll act remorseful at first to lower your guard, then slide in outrageous financial demands once they think you're willing to compromise, Zhang reminded me, spreading case files across the conference table. Their core goal is to get you to drop the criminal trespass and online defamation filings and squeeze extra cash out of you on top of the marital joint savings you're legally entitled to split evenly. Don't soften your stance, no matter how Zhou Ming begs for leniency. 10 minutes later, Zhou Ming and his lawyer stepped through the conference room door. He looked gaunt and unkempt, his suit jacket wrinkled as if he hadn't ironed it in weeks, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights spent stressing over his job security and his mother's drained life savings. His attorney, Lawyer Wang, put on a calm, professional front, extending a hand across the table that I only shook briefly before sitting back down on my side of the long table, Zhang seated firmly beside me as my legal buffer. The opposing lawyer opened the dialogue with rehearsed soft remorse, pushing a draft divorce agreement across the laminate toward me. My client Zhou Ming sincerely apologizes for all the conflict and harm this marital dispute has caused Ms. Shen. We hope we can reach an amicable out-of-court settlement to spare both sides the reputational damage of a public criminal trial and civil litigation. I picked up the printed agreement and flipped through the clauses slowly, each line more absurd than the last, a bitter, quiet laugh building in my chest as I scanned their shameless demands. The document stated my fully pre-owned apartment was to be split with Zhou Ming, requiring me to pay him 1 million yuan in youth compensation as a settlement fee. The 30,000 yuan joint bank deposit we'd accumulated over the month of marriage would be split 50-50. But only if I immediately withdrew all police criminal reports and issued a public online statement claiming all prior conflict was merely a harmless family misunderstanding. I set the papers down flat on the table, sliding them back across to Lawyer Wang without a single word of hesitation. This proposal is entirely unreasonable and legally baseless. My premarital real estate has complete purchase records and deed documentation proving sole individual ownership. There is no legal ground for any split or so-called youth compensation payout. Zhou Ming's had shot up, desperation thick in his voice. 1 million might be too much. We can negotiate the number down, 50,000, 30,000, anything you can spare. Just drop all the police filings against my mom and sister. They can't carry criminal records. It'll ruin everything for our whole family. I locked eyes with him, my tone cold and steady, no trace of sympathy for the mess they created with their own choices. You have this backwards. It is not me who holds all the bargaining power to grant you mercy. It is your family's own illegal actions that put your careers and reputations on the line. The criminal trespass case, the online defamation lawsuit against Zhou Ling, all of these were triggered by choices your mother and sister made, without any provocation from me. Lawyer Wang jumped in to salvage the negotiation, switching to emotional manipulation tactics after their monetary demands fell flat. Ms. Shen, consider the short month you two were married. There's no need to drag this into multiple court cases that will follow both of you for years. A quick, quiet settlement benefits your high-profile corporate image far more than drawn-out litigation full of messy domestic drama. My career was built through 6 years of consistent client results and professional output. I replied without wavering. No amount of their slander or illegal behavior can undo the work I've put into my company's standing. Their reputational damage is self-inflicted, not a burden I am obligated to erase with cash handouts. Zhang Yu leaned forward then, cutting off Lawyer Wang's attempts to reframe the conversation, laying out our 3 non-negotiable conditions one at a time, each term clear and unalterable. First, formal divorce signed today, property division strictly following marriage law, all real estate, vehicles, savings, stocks purchased by MS. Shun prior to the wedding remain 100% hers. The 30,000 yuan joint marital deposit shall be split equally between the 2 parties with no additional compensation of any kind required for my client. Second, Lu Yifan must submit a handwritten, thoroughly detailed written apology letter, reviewed and approved by our legal team, promising permanent zero contact with MS. Shun via phone, social media, in-person visits, or third-party meddling for the rest of her life. Third, Zhou Ming, Lu Yifan, and Zhou Ling shall jointly compensate MS. Shun a total of 500,000 yuan to cover hotel accommodation fees, lock replacement costs, professional cleaning and notary fees, mental distress damages, and reputational harm stemming from their trespass, and online harassment. Once all 3 conditions are fully fulfilled with verified proof of payment and signed documents, we will formally withdraw the criminal trespass report and suspend the defamation civil suit against Zhou Ling. The second the 500,000 compensation figure left Zheng's mouth, Zhou Ming shot up from his chair in shock, voice cracking with panic. 500,000? We don't have that kind of money at all. My mom's fixed deposit is only 300,000, and I barely have 200,000 total in savings and combined pension funds. We have full bank asset records for your mother's fixed-term deposit and your personal financial accounts pulled during evidence discovery, Zhang retorted calmly, sliding printed bank statements across the table for them to view. 300,000 plus your 200,000 liquid assets equals exactly the 500,000 compensation amount we've requested. This sum covers every material and emotional loss your family has forced my client to endure over these weeks, with no extra punitive markup added beyond verifiable damages. Lu Yufin's prior greed and entitlement vanished instantly, replaced by sheer terror at the prospect of emptying their life savings to make amends. Zhao Ming's shoulders sagged completely, his hands shaking as he stared at the bank printouts laid out before him. There was no room to lie about their available funds anymore. All financial records have been legally subpoenaed and verified by our legal team. Lawyer Wang attempted to bargain the compensation number down, arguing the sum was overly harsh, but Zhang shut down every attempt to haggle before he could finish speaking. Every dollar of this compensation is traceable to direct losses caused by your client's unlawful conduct. Multiple nights of 5-star hotel lodging after they locked MS. Shinout, emergency locksmith and premium smart lock replacement, full apartment deep cleaning and damaged furniture restoration, private surveillance and detective fees for evidence collection, plus quantifiable professional reputational harm from Zhou Ling's viral slander post. If you reject these terms, all active criminal and civil filings will proceed straight to trial with no further settlement offers extended. Zhou Ming fell silent for a long stretch, staring blankly at the table as he weighed the two terrible options laid out in front of him. Empty the family's combined savings to close all legal cases, or carry permanent criminal records that would destroy his state enterprise promotion chances and end Zhou Ling's teaching career entirely. After 10 full minutes of agonized, quiet deliberation, he lifted his head, defeated and hollow. I need to go home and talk this over with my mother. Can we have a 3-day grace period to gather the funds and draft the apology letter? 3 days is the absolute maximum we will grant, Zhang confirmed, sliding a formal settlement deadline document across the table for him to sign as acknowledgement. 3 days from this exact time, bring the fully executed divorce papers, the signed, edited apology letter from Lu Yufan, and full wire transfer proof of the 500,000 compensation payment to this conference room. Missing the deadline results in all legal cases moving forward immediately with no possibility of future settlement talks. Zhou Ming signed the deadline agreement with a shaky pen grip, his attorney packing up the unbalanced draft divorce papers they tried to pressure me into accepting without another word of argument. As they exited the conference room, I watched Zhou Ming's hunched back disappear down the hallway, fully aware the next 72 hours would bring endless screaming fights between him, his mother, and sister over the 500,000 yuan they'd be forced to surrender as restitution for all their selfish, cruel choices. Zhang Yu turned to me once the office door clicked shut behind them, a quiet, satisfied smile tugging at her lips. They have zero escape routes now. Every asset, every career vulnerability we identified is on the table, and they have no legal counterarguments left to lean on. 3 days from now, this toxic chapter of your life will officially close for good. I nodded, staring out the floor-to-ceiling law firm window at the city skyline, a quiet sense of release settling over my chest after months of constant conflict and harassment. They'd spent weeks trying to strip my autonomy, seize my earnings, and steal my private home, and now they would pay every single cost their greed had accumulated, no loopholes, no cheap apologies to brush their harm aside.